I love so many kinds of music. I don't think I'm like Prince in any way, shape, or form, other than being from Minnesota. But I love him. I feel like he was such an artist, a true artist, and followed his thing to the hilt. And Prince was somebody who I think who really mixed the sacred with the profane. So like God is not too far away, even in like the funkiest, sexy song. There's still a mix of the divine and the carnal, and I think that spiritual like undertone. I mean, to me, there's not like Christian music and not Christian music. I mean, like music is music, and everybody's sort of beliefs and life path infuses their writing. So maybe we aren't so dissimilar, me and Prince.
Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host, Jason English. Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast, all the major podcasts, music, and social media platforms come together, and of course, interesting conversations. We have all of our content on our website, CuriousGoldfishJason.com. You can find Curious Goldfish in all the major podcast and social media platforms, and of course, we have all of our content on our website, CuriousGoldfish.com. Chances are I will never get to meet Alice Peacock's children, which is a shame because I'd love to just sit them down, look them in the eyes, and try to convince them how cool their mom is. Not that they need convincing, I'm sure. But Alice has had an extraordinary run the last few decades, including sharing a music label with the likes of Five for Fighting and Train, having John Mayer join her in her recording of her hit song Bliss, and a fantastic return to recording a few years back with her album Minnesota. Alice performs the title track Just For Us at the end of our conversation, performing it with the backdrop of a sun-splashed Gulf of Mexico behind her. That gap between her Aware Records stint and Minnesota is perhaps the best example of why Alice is so cool. She's a successful musician, confident in her songwriting and singing, and she was so confident that she focused on raising her family, sacrificing her own career to spend quality time with her little ones. She obviously has no regrets, but you can tell she's like a kid herself now, wide-eyed with an anticipation and excitement as she's starting to get back into the swing of things, performing at music festivals and handfuls of gigs here and there. We cover a lot in our conversation, and once and for all, she helps us settle the score on the best spot for Cincinnati Chili. Here's Alice Peacock. Let's dive in. Alice Peacock, so nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you.
I really appreciate your time. We are here in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida for 30A. How many years have you been here?
This is my third year.
What about this event? Do you think it makes it different than others?
I think, well, the destination is pretty spectacular. I mean, right now we're looking at the ocean and the sun is shining and there's a beautiful white sand beach, which, you don't get it. So, I don't know. Poughkeepsie Songwriter Festival. I've never played that one, but I'm sure the view is not as good. I don't
too bad for Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, too bad. Yeah, Schenectady has a much better one. I like to describe this. It's like our musicians conference. I mean, even though we're here for the festival and we're playing for people, a great listening audience, people are respectful. They're there to hear the songs. But so many artists, we never get to see our friends because we're always just ships passing. You'll see your friend's poster at some club and be like, oh, he's there next weekend. And, you never get to see each other. So here I'm able to actually catch up with a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time and get to hear their songs. And it's just it's a great hang.
Yeah, I've seen you a few times outside of your performances, and I was going to ask you, do you take the opportunity to not just catch up and stuff, but do you pick each other's brains, or is it more just like kind of surface level?
I mean, conversations get deep. In some ways, I wish we had even more time so then we could sit down and write and
do things,
and actually have a minute. It's a lot of we keep moving pretty well, and we stay up very late, so we have to pace ourselves.
Right. The late night house shows are great.
They're very fun.
Yeah.
They're very fun, and it's the after hours kind of jams and conversations. We tend to talk about all sorts of things, projects and creativity. I went to Daryl Scott's set last night. It was 2 sets after mine at the same venue, and I hear a lot of songs, and one of his songs just took me down. I was just standing in the back and I just started weeping.
Oh,
and
wow.
I thought, wow, I was not prepared for this. And I went up and talked to him afterwards, and then Beth Nielsen Chapman was standing there, and her song Sand and Water tears me up as well. And so we started talking about grief, and we started talking about, the conversations are usually not surface ever.
Well, that's great. Obviously there's a lot of artists here. It's a different experience because of the different venues. There's really just one big stage, but everything else is kind of scattered. But if you had to pick a lineup one evening for the Alice Peacock Festival in Cincinnati, what would be the lineup? 4 or 5 artists that come to mind?
Yeah, that's a hard one because I have so many favorites. But I think Prince would be my headliner.
Okay.
Stevie Wonder would be on there.
Okay.
Joni Mitchell would also play. Probably maybe some Neil Young. And, I got to go for 5 here. Shoot, this is really hard. I don't know, probably just a great soul act, like a James Brown or Sly and the Family Stone, or I can't choose.
That's right.
I don't know. It's too hard.
That's pretty diverse. Your inspiration and kind of what you consider maybe inspiring you to be a songwriter and be a musician. Do you lean towards the genre?
Well, it's interesting, because I named a lot of R&B soul artists. I love so many kinds of music. I don't think I'm like Prince in any way, shape, or form, other than being from Minnesota. But I love him, and I love how he. You know what? Actually, I shouldn't say that, because I feel like he was such an artist, a true artist, and followed his thing to the hilt. And Prince was somebody who really mixed the sacred with the profane. We were talking before we started our interview a little bit about our church backgrounds growing up in the church, and a lot of R&B and soul artists grew up singing in church, and so God is not too far away, even in the funkiest sexy song. There's still a mix of the divine and the carnal, and I think that spiritual undertone. There's to me it's there's not Christian music and not Christian music. It's music is music, and everybody's sort of beliefs and life path infuses their writing. So maybe we aren't so dissimilar, me and Prince. And then I think if obviously great singer-songwriters like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell and Jackson Browne and Carole King, and people who could sit down at their instrument and just, write a song that was very heartfelt and personal, especially Joni. Joni was a huge influence on me. She sang about herself in positive and negative ways. Right. She was very honest, and maybe one of the first artists I heard sing about herself that way, very confessional. And to me, that's interesting. That's the music I'm interested in making, because it's really a form of therapy for me. Just processing my own thoughts and emotions and feelings. And then, other people put their own interpretations on other people's songs too. We put our own, everybody's songs affect us differently, personally.
Right. You use the term singer-songwriter. Do you think, is it, I'm always curious about people that can really, really sing. There's a role there, right, to be a good vocalist. But for those people that are like that want to be good songwriters, is that a bigger leap, do you think, than a person that can really put amazing words down on paper that needs to learn maybe how to sing? What have you thought about that? What's the bigger jump, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I do know people who are just lyricists, but they do have a sense of music. They understand structure of a song, and they know how long a chorus should be, how long a verses should be. They have a internal idea of musical composition, but their lyrics are really their gift. Look at all those songs that Bernie Taupin and Elton John wrote together. Bernie did the words, Elton did the music, and they wrote these amazing tunes. Grew up always just singing. That's my voice is my instrument, and then figured out a way how do I get this musical idea across. I'm a self-taught, and so they both kind of just came very organically to me, the writing, the lyrics, and the music. But
and you wrote songs at a pretty young age, right?
Always. Yeah. When I hear my kids, sometimes I'll hear my kids sort of fiddling around on the piano or something. It makes my heart warm, because it reminds me of me picking out tunes. Usually they were songs I heard. Maybe I would try and play this Eagles song that I heard on the radio, but a lot of it were just my own original compositions. And
what comes first typically? I know it may differ on the song, but does the music and the melody come first, or the words? Yeah,
music and the melody, but they kind of show up together in some ways. the music and the melody, and I'm singing usually just nonsense words over a melody, and then sometimes a word will jump in, and I'll say, "Oh, maybe that's what this is song's about. Maybe that's something, or a little phrase, and maybe that's part of my chorus." But that's usually how I like to write. It's like a phrase that just appears out of the ether. I mean, I've yet to take a poem or something and prose and put it to music, because usually that, for me, it has to sing well. Like it has to. The words have to sound good coming out of my mouth.
Can anybody do it? I think I've read an interview once where you said, you wrote songs when you were growing up, but you were in college doing musical theater, and I think you were on a retreat or something, and you just said, "Oh yeah, like normal people can write songs too." Well, and that's kind of the epiphany, I guess.
I do believe that. I mean, so we spend our summers up at a wilderness camp, 2 wilderness camps up on the Minnesota-Canadian border, and I teach songwriting at the girls' camp. And teach is, I joke and say it's kind of a loose term, but we write songs together. I show the girls like we're writing camp songs together, and it kind of demystifies the process, because I just think that it's a great thing. I mean, little kids make up songs all the time. You hear little children just singing along and singing their own little songs, and at some point in time, someone tells them to be quiet, or it's not very good, or whatever. And I think we close off that creative outlet, and we should all be making up little songs. I mean, and what's a good song? What's a good song? What's a bad song? I mean, it's a joyful way to express yourself. Some people paint, some people dance. I'm not saying everyone has to be musical,
sure,
but I do think we all have the potential to put our thoughts in a song way, or be a part of something, which is fun. At camp, maybe the girls aren't writing their own song, but we're writing it together, and they're really excited about the song that they wrote about s'mores. And then we sang it at dinner, and then all of a sudden they start singing it on their canoe trips, and they're like, "I was a part of this song. I helped write this song."
It's just one of those things where, you do come to a festival like this and listen to music, and you're like, man, that's really cool. And you have to kind of be vulnerable to be willing to actually put it on paper.
Yep.
But then what's it like to put it on paper, put words or put music around it, and then sing it in front of people? I mean, that's got to be really, really something.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's, I mean, at least for me, I mean, every new song, sometimes I'm very, very excited about a song, and I'm like, this song is good, and I'm excited to play it. And sometimes I'll write something that feels like pretty personal, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, this might suck. And what if it's terrible? Is
your song Time, is that still your favorite?
I love Time. Yeah, that was one of those songs that I feel just sort of dropped from the heavens into my lap. I wrote it so fast. I do think there's a few times I've had songwriting experiences like that where I've just sat down and I was just kind of a conduit. And that's always a fun thing when that happens, because it just feels too easy. And it's meaningful to me, So yeah, I mean, there's some people who are incredible craftspeople. They're meticulous, they edit, they hone. I'm a pretty fast writer in that I think that's just kind of how I am also as a musician. I'm just pretty organic. If I don't feel it right away, I often will just discard it and move on to something else. It's probably also my ADHD, which I just found out that officially I have. But long suspected. Yeah. It actually makes my whole life make complete sense now. I'm like, oh, that's why I always did my papers the night before.
Yeah.
So I lose interest if it doesn't feel like it's flowing. There is beauty in sticking with something, really. And I have written with a few different co-writers who are that way, who go back and they revise and they edit, and that would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
But I can learn a lot from that. And they not only are very talented, they get the spark, but they also have the craft thing down too, which they're both important.
I mean, you have to be patient and methodical and just,
Yeah, because they really want to make it right.
Right.
I'm maybe a little willy-nilly sometimes, and I'll just throw it out there. And could there be a better word? Very possibly. Could I have edited more? Yeah, right. It's possibly true. But I once read Joni Mitchell said, well, maybe it was about a recording. She said a recording is just a snapshot in time, and instead of like looking back, sometimes I'll look back at some of my songs and my records and just think, oh, I wish I'd done that differently, or why did I put that on the record? But it's where I was.
Yeah, it's part of the process.
It's just, you got to be okay with being vulnerable and putting it out into the world and then saying goodbye to it.
Well, speaking of your career, you were signed with Columbia.
Yes.
How old were you?
I mean, I wasn't a baby.
No, but you were in your 20s, right?
No, I was, I was 29. Yeah, I mean, maybe like right on the edge.
Yeah.
29, 30. Yeah, well, I was signed to Aware Records, which it's a subsidiary, yeah. And so the Aware had had huge success with John Mayer. He was blowing up at the time, and also Train and Fight for Fighting. And Aware was founded by a guy named Greg Latterman, who used to do these Aware compilations, these CDs.
Yeah,
I don't know,
those
do you
are cool.
remember those in college?
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Yeah, and they would, he put all sorts of bands on there. Jacko Pierce and, I don't know, like just Dave Matthews probably. I don't know, all these bands were probably on these Aware compilations, and these, college students, the street team, would take and pass them out at school, and then the bands would come and play. I mean, it was brilliant. It was a great model of how to build a grassroots music network. And so Greg had a lot of success with that. And anyway, so he signed me to Aware.
If you think about it, that was kind of the precursor to all the streaming playlists.
It was.
Right?
There was just a lot more poster hanging and feet on the street. Yeah, it was the street team.
And
yeah.
Pace Magazine, right? Like early on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember getting all those samplers. It's funny you mentioned Jacko Pierce because I saw them twice last year.
Yeah.
I'm seeing them in Atlanta in February at Eddie's Attic again.
Awesome. Yeah,
and
Carrie's. I know Carrie Pierce well.
Do you? Yeah. It's funny how artists and music can basically be like a lifelong partner.
For sure.
And it's like these two guys that were in Texas blew up in the 90s. Those songs are still relevant to me today.
Yeah. Pat McGee Band.
Yeah.
So many people, I did some dates with Pat, and I had friends of mine who were like, oh my gosh, I saw him when I was at UVA or wherever. Some other college. I was at Denison. I was, whatever college. And when you see bands in your formative years, like those are, I remember Trip Shakespeare, Dan Wilson, Semisonic. I'm trying to think of other bands, Indigo Girls.
Right.
And Sean Colvin. I will be fans of their music. I'll want to get their stuff forever.
Yeah, forever.
It just
was
important at that time of my life.
So you mentioned John Mayer. Bliss was the song that you guys did together, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have a story, an anecdote on that experience?
No, I mean it's not as exciting as it scintillating as it might seem.
Yeah.
No, I wrote the song, and Greg had gotten, and from what I understand, I'm on a need to know basis. I believe Greg got him the recording, and I think he liked it. I heard he said, "Hey, can I sing on it?" I don't know if Greg said, "Hey, can you sing on it?" I'm not quite sure what happened, but he ended up putting his background vocal on, which was super cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And Greg asked me, he's like, "John Mayer wants to sing in your song. Can you, is that cool?" And I was like, I suppose. I mean,
yeah,
if he has to.
Well, that's cool. That's really good.
Yeah, so that was fun.
So Columbia, and then I know you talk about this all the time, but put out a few albums, then became a mother, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you released Minnesota on your own.
Yep.
A couple years ago,
Yeah.
right? What's the difference for those of us that aren't really part of the music industry? What's the big difference between being on a label like Columbia and then doing something like that?
It's really just the money they can put behind you. I was with Columbia, and then I ended up getting out of my deal. I ended up feeling like I really wanted to be independent. I think in the major label system, there's so many artists, or at least there were so many artists, and it was like, we're prioritizing this project and this project, and these projects can just they're fend for themselves. And so it's frustrating. It was frustrating for me to work really, really hard and tour a lot and do all those radio interviews and not feel like maybe you had label support behind you. And so ultimately I had a choice to either turn in another record or go, and I chose to go. I don't really like anyone being the boss of me. That's sort of my personality. And so I like to know that I'm in charge of I'd like to know that if I work really hard, I will also see the results from that. And if I don't work really hard and I'm lazy, then nothing's going to happen. So, I mean, it's like I don't like someone else being in charge of my creative baby. These were my songs. This is my heart. This is my art and my dream. And if a corporation is in charge of that, they don't care. I mean, I could be a widget. Doesn't matter. They don't care about. So it's just, I don't know. I just feel like art being corporatized in general is just a bad idea. So
which scenario has more pressure on it? Is it pleasing and getting the sales for the label, or is it the amount of work that's involved in just doing it on your own?
Today you have to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And I have 3 kids. I don't have my showbiz hat is small.
Yeah.
I'm mostly in mom mode, which is amazing and the best thing I've ever done in my life. So I don't regret that at all. But music has definitely taken a back seat to being a parent. It is a lot of work being an independent artist that being said, there's so many more conduits to getting your music out there look at all the control that someone has. Like if you really work it and you really are out there working the socials, getting out on tour, you'll see some results. You'll build a fan base. And I think artists are finding out, friends of mine, they want quality gigs. They want to play gigs. They don't want to play noisy bars where no one's listening. Like they want to play cool house concerts or songwriter series or things where people are really there to listen to the songs and are appreciative. And they'd rather have a small, loyal following and build a community around that than pursue the big dream, which the odds are not in your favor, especially today when radio is like not a thing. It's just different. Yeah. And I think people don't have an attention span. Like you and I would sit and listen to a whole record and we would look at the liner notes and we'd want to know all the songs.
Totally.
And I just don't think kids doing that as much. Some are. I think they're finding old music. They're coming back to it. It's fun. My almost 14-year-old was listening to Tears for Fears the other day, and I was like, man, that's like my jam.
This feels like the playing field is leveled with Bandcamp,
yes,
Patreon. Like there's outlets for artists to do it, where back in the day you would need to convince somebody in a boardroom somewhere that there's a there.
Well, now that being said, there used to be real music guys in there. I mean, there used to be people who were really good at their jobs in the industry who were music lovers. I know several of them. They're retired or gone. As I think things became more corporate and it became more about, millions being sold, those artists that maybe took a while to grow weren't given that chance. Like if you didn't sell 1 million copies out of the gate, they were like, and you're done. Versus, in the 70s, it's just one I should have... Man, I know. Like there was a lot of artist development. I mean, Neil Young. I mean, so many people. Bruce Springsteen. I mean, didn't have like big hits. 3-4 albums in. I don't know. There was people who believed in the artists. They worked at the labels. People will say, yeah, there was a lot of money to go around. There was enough. Everybody was making money, so it was easy for them to be patient. But I just don't think that those tastemakers are necessarily there anymore. And the downside of having so much music out there is, it is kind of hard to find. I mean, we're having to discover it ourselves because there used to be someone who was kind of like, hey, this is good, this is good, this is good.
You listen to it, yeah.
But, that's not bad either.
Yeah. So the Minnesota album came out a few years ago. You worked with Phil Madera,
yes, right?
I know Phil from decades ago. He was part of the Ragamuffin Band with Rich Mullins, who I'm a big fan of, who tragically died in a car accident in the late 90s. But Phil Madera, even then in the 90s, I saw him perform, and he's like the pro's pro. Mm-hmm. He could play everything. Yep. And now I think he's playing with Emmylou Harris a lot. So talk about that, the record, right?
What was cool about that, I mean, I've played with great players. On my Who I Am record, Jay Bellerose was on drums. I mean, one of the best drummers ever. Charlie Drayton played drums on my self-titled record. There've been some, John Bryan played guitar on my Columbia record. I've had some great musicians on my projects. But the record that I did with Phil, Chris Donahue, Brian Owings, Phil Madera, they're Emmylou's band. Yeah. So it was like ready-made band. Like they play together all the time. Phil and I have been friends for a really long time, and I didn't have a huge budget, but it was like, hey, if I was going to come down and let's try and do 10, 12 tracks, how could we do this economically and make it fun and whatever? And he's like, I got the guys. Like, we're here. We're here.
This is what we do.
We're here. And I was like, great. Sounds great. And then, my friend Wayne Kirkpatrick put some guitar down. We had a couple other folks come in and put few overdubs on. Will Kimbrough played. But they all play together all the time. So they speak that language. Right. But, Nashville has so many, I think they have the largest concentration of the best musicians in the world. And they are pros. I didn't have to give really any direction. It was like, here's the song, play what you would play. Right. And of course it was great. I love what they brought to the record.
At this stage in your career, what are you curious about when it comes to life, music? What's out there that you're interested in?
Well, I want to continue to improve. I would like to improve on my playing. If I always say, sometimes I'll have a really great show and I'll be like, gosh, it sounded good. Like my guitar playing was good. Like if I would only practice, imagine how much better I would get. So, I'd like to make more time for that. I would love to, my piano playing, I'd really love to learn or fake, New Orleans stride piano. Like I talk about that being my old lady gig. Like that would be, that'll be me in the home.
See that. Yeah, I can see that.
Entertaining the folks at cocktail hour. Yeah, no, I don't know, that sounds fun. So just improving my music skills and continuing to write. I don't have any like goals other than just continuing to make interesting art.
Yeah. So it's been a few years since Minnesota. Do you have plans for a new album?
I am just kind of coming out of a bit of a fallow period. You know, the record came out right before COVID hit, so it's not a great time for a record to come out. So there wasn't a lot of touring behind it.
Yeah.
And then we all just sat at home. And some people made records, like Taylor Swift made 2 records. I did not. I took a lot of naps. We went on a lot of hikes. I baked a lot. Life is busy with 11-year-old twins and a almost 14-year-old and sports and just life. So I've been doing a bit of writing, but I feel like I'm just kind of still coming out of the whole 2020 shutdown thing. And I don't think I quite have enough songs yet for a new album, but
I was going to ask you a year or 2 years in between albums. I'm just wondering the production and the output, if you do have a backlog of material to sort of pare down, or if it, because of what you're doing in your responsibilities, it's not like that. You have to actually kind of take one and, build it, over the course of a few years,
Yeah. I mean, I have not had the time to just like, I'm going to crank out 10 songs. Yeah. So some of my songs, may be several years old by the time I get around to recording them. But I think there's still, I have to feel it. I have to say, is there still a thread here? Is this still interesting to me? Am I still in this place where I want to share that? I think that's the danger of letting something sit for too long, because you might not be in that space anymore. It's not a danger.
Right.
It's good. It's good that you wrote it. It's good you got it out there. I would probably look back at all my stuff and say, okay, what's the uniting thread in all of this? Is there a idea? And the thought is, do I make a full album? I don't know. Are people even listening to full albums? Do I do just like a 4-song EP or 3-song EP? I don't know what the plan would be.
Yeah.
Maybe something like smaller, 5 and under. Do something like that. And it is nice to have something printed, whether that's on vinyl or CD, just to sell at a show, even though everybody's streaming. But
well, no, I've been talking to a few people this weekend, and obviously the vinyl thing is a complete resurgence.
Yeah.
I was shocked how many people are still doing the CD thing.
Yeah.
Signing CDs, and because I think there is something to be said for the physical product. And
well, artists will joke. They'll say, well, while you're listening to the streaming, you can look at this and look, there's lyrics. You can open it up.
Yeah, you can
There's a booklet in here. And
But it's interesting, right? Because I think the profit margin can be decent for the physical products, right?
Yeah, we don't sell like we used to. I mean, I used to, with shows, you could sell a box of CDs easy in a night, which was a really important part of a touring artist's income. We don't have that really anymore. So I feel like you're in the t-shirt business now, or whatever it is, merch, other types of merch. That's what I am seeing artist friends selling.
Yeah.
Merch, t-shirts and things, because people still want something to take away from the experience, but it's not necessarily a CD.
Right.
And vinyl's expensive to produce, but folks are doing it.
Folks are doing it, yeah.
I just don't want a basement full of vinyl. I already have boxes of CDs that I don't know what I'm going to do with.
Right.
They're going to be buried with me someday.
So do you think if you do the 5-song project or a 3-song project, is that a 2024 goal or
maybe
or not really?
I don't know. We'll have to see what happens in the next few months. I get pretty energized being down here. It's easy to get caught up in the stuff when you get home and you're like, oh, I have to go get groceries. There's so much laundry to do. Yeah, I'm gonna go get a couple co-writes set up in February. My friend Wayne Kirkpatrick, and I'm gonna sit down with Chuck Cannon and see what we come up with, and a few other people, and see what happens. So I hope we spend our summers up at these wilderness camps. So that's a big chunk of my summer. I'm leading canoe trips up in Canada, which is cool. So that takes up. I become a whole different person in the summer. I'm wilderness Alice.
And home now for you is Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
What's the music scene in Cincinnati like?
We've only been there 6 years or so. And again, because I'm not out playing, it's not like an industry town like a Nashville or a New York or a LA where there really is. There's an industry, and you can. There's a lot of concentration of musicians where you can get in the studio and write. That's nice for me because I can sort of balance that mom artist workload. I can be in the studio and writing, and I can be home for dinner. So I don't have that. I have to be much more self-directed in Cincinnati. But there are artists there. There's a lot of musicians. I mean, the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music is there. There's a classical scene. There's a jazz scene. There are songwriters there. The Nationals from there, over the Rhine. There is a music scene. And I think it's growing. Cincinnati's been a really fun surprise for me. I didn't know much about it before we moved there. And like some great restaurants and breweries, and the architecture is fascinating. It's an old city. Reminds me of like a Pittsburgh or something. You know, like there's a lot of green space. There's a lot of history. So I think artists are moving there. You know, cost of living's probably less, and
right.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, Skyline or Gold Star?
Oh, Skyline for sure. As my children, every time we go past,
pause.
No, if they go past a Gold Star, they're like, boo.
No contemplation.
Yeah, we've never even tried Gold Star.
Really?
Yeah, to be fair, but we won't, because we are loyal to the Skyline. Yep.
All right. Well, you know, the Gold Star conies are something. There's something there, but
I mean, Skyline has chili cheese conies. Why would you go across? Why would you cross that line?
I'm not from there, or I don't live there, so
well,
I've only
all right.
visited.
You don't have anything invested in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not even stakeholders or anything. It's not like we own shares in Skyline. But that's my husband's from Cincinnati, and it's sort of like, you know, his grandpa ran the international division at P&G, and so when we got married, he was very specific. There was some, you know, we were going to eat Jif peanut butter, and we were going to use Tide. And we were very brand loyal, and I don't care. I'm like, oh, whatever. You know, I like the natural peanut butter. Yeah. So what kind of toothpaste do you use? It's probably what you used when you were a kid, unless you realized that you didn't like that anymore. I use Jason. It's a natural toothpaste. We're going to talk about products. Also, some natural deodorant that I just bought at Publix that I don't normally use. It was not my brand, but we'll hope it's working. I'm sitting here in the sun,
you're good. Yeah. I think you're good.
I'm not offending myself right now, so that's good.
So one last brief topic, loyalty. So you mentioned loyalty to P&G and brands. You grew up in Minnesota. You live in Cincinnati. I grew up in Missouri. So the Midwest. Missouri. It's actually Missouri.
I don't know.
But there's something, I always have a tie there. You know, you grow up, I don't know if it's a Midwestern thing, but like how does loyalty to your roots and your heritage, you named it your recent album about Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Your husband's from Cincinnati. I would imagine that's what brought you back to Cincinnati in terms of raising the family and stuff. Yeah. But can you talk a little bit about that? Like how,
I think it's a home. I think it's more just like that sense of home where your childhood was. There's a lot of touchstones that remind you, smells and sounds. I mean, this is lovely as I look around me and I think, could I live here? I mean, I think I would enjoy it very much. But at some point in time, I would say, you know what? I need some cold weather and I need some snow and I want to hear some loons and some red-winged blackbirds. And I want to, there's sights and smells that remind you of your childhood. At least for me, I lived in Los Angeles. I've lived a lot of different places. I lived in Nashville for 10 years. Very nice, kind of temperate weather, but like they got poisonous snakes there. We don't have anything poisonous in Minnesota. It's too cold. We don't have poisonous spiders. We don't even have brown recluse. As I'm knocking on the table. I don't know. Maybe they have them now, but we don't have anything poisonous. Like nothing survives the cold. The idea of living somewhere where there might be like cottonmouths in the water. No bueno.
Yeah, no,
right?
No thanks.
No.
Yeah. Well, so
you have those in Missouri, though.
Missouri copperheads for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. There's
I don't think there's copperheads in Minnesota. I really don't think there's any venomous snakes there.
Yeah,
which
I'm sure
makes
you're
me feel very safe.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I feel pretty safe out there in the wilderness because nothing really is going to kill me. I mean, a moose. If it got really mad.
There might be some moose.
You just need to make noise.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were messing with their cubs, they would get mad, but they're scared of us. Yeah.
So I think the inspiration for this podcast is Ted Lasso. There's lots of things about Ted Lasso that sort of changed how I look at myself and be a leader in my job. This is not a full-time job. This is like a passion project. But one thing I really appreciate about it that is subtle, but he's from Kansas. Mm-hmm. The character's from Kansas. Right. Jason Sudeikis, who created the series, is from Kansas. There's Easter eggs in pretty much every episode, but throughout the 3 seasons where it's Kansas, it's barbecue sauce, it's elements, and that's how I think. Everything I do, whether it's personally or professionally, I always try to tie it back to me growing up in Missouri, and it was really cool to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you relate to that? Have you tried to do that in some of your songwriting?
I don't know that I've intentionally left Easter eggs, but you know what? I guess, yeah. I'm thinking like a song, real life. Grew up in a Minnesota town. I reference Chicago. I guess our culture. Sure. I'm sure it's part of who we are. I never talked about like hot dish or hockey in my songs yet, but there's still time. Don't you know? Yeah, that's interesting. I think, how could your culture, your background not filter into your work?
Right.
Whatever that is.
Yeah. It was just interesting, again, not to go crazy on it, but him being in the UK, it's so uptight, sophisticated. Mm-hmm. There's all these things, and he's just like this good old boy from the Midwest, talking about different aspects of that life, and he's unashamed. Right. Which I love. Right?
Well, I do think that's true. I mean, I'm my father's daughter. I mean, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to strangers. I'm different than some of my friends who maybe are from big cities and are much more reserved. I mean, I'm a Minnesotan for sure. I mean, I can talk with anyone, and I enjoy that. Now, I shouldn't say that every Minnesotan does, but it's a very Midwestern quality, I think, for us to be kind of open-hearted and sort of like, I describe myself. They always say that we're our dogs, like we choose dogs that are like us. And I've had a couple golden retrievers, and I think I'm kind of a golden retriever. If I were,
I could see that.
A person, a dog. If I were a dog, someone was like, hey, what's going on? Hi, and, with like the full expectation that people are gonna like me because I'm just like, hi, everything's pretty great, and and then if someone has some attitude, I don't know, I don't respect. I don't know. I like social cliques and things like that. If they're, even as a grown up, sometimes there's like moms. There's like little mom groups, and I bust into them, fully expecting that I'm going to be included. I mean, they might be rolling their eyes and talking about me behind my back, but I'm not going to be negative about it. I'm just going to be like, what are we talking about? What's going on?
Well, thoughts and prayers to the person that doesn't include Alice Peacock.
Right? I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want to know me?
Seriously.
I mean, jeez.
Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you, Alice. I would love if you could play a couple songs.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. The moon is waxing over the water, a silver path across the lake. The loon is calling to her lover, the sweetest love song ever sang. Minnesota, land of my childhood, you are flowing through my veins, and I am drawn to your safe harbor, forever thirsty for a drink. Last night we watched the electric light show, playing wide across the sky. Sat on the front porch in sacred silence. Yeah, the sparks almost made me cry. Minnesota, land of my childhood, you are flowing through my veins, and I am drawn to your safe harbor, forever thirsty for a drink. Like the willow, my roots grow stronger, searching deep, searching wide. I longer until I reach the other side. The moon is waxing over the water. 1,000,000 stars fill up the night. I am nothing. I am holy, a voyager under northern lights. Minnesota, land of my childhood, you are flowing through my veins, and I am drawn to your safe harbor, forever thirsty for a drink, forever thirsty for a drink.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Curious Goldfish. Please follow and subscribe to the podcast and on social media. Also, tell your music-loving friends about us too. Until next time, stay curious.